about 8 boards in this room right now.
Okay, you're going this way.
All right. Go.
All right, cool.
Be quiet. Go away.
Are you all set, JR?
Good to go.
All right, perfect.
Actually, no, hold on. I'm not. 1 second.
Yo, what the hell?
I'm so excited for this podcast right now, man. Oh my gosh. Oh.
I don't have any beer. Damn.
Oh, what the heck?
All right. I'm good. We're ready.
I'm
We're rocking.
pumped for this.
Final answer? Final answer?
Final answer.
All right. All right, so I'm going to start recording in 2 seconds here.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of On the Gutter. This week, we are doing the full podcast via Zoom. So, of course, this is DJ. And Mikey, what's going on, man?
What's going on, DJ?
Not much. How about you, dude?
Oh, we're hanging in there.
Right on. So for everybody listening, we actually have like a special edition podcast this week. We're joined by somebody I classify as the controversial king, the man who will not back down from a fight on any social media platform out there, Mr. JR Raymond. JR, how are you doing, dude?
I am, living the dream. I get to talk to you guys. How cool is it that I get to speak with you two legends? It's pretty awesome. What are you drinking? What is that? Hold on, time out. Oh, I forgot people can only hear, so they can't really see.
Right. So I'm drinking a drink called Beaver Buzz. It's an energy drink. It's like a affiliate of the podcast, but it's my go-to drink. It just keeps me going and not hurting anybody while I'm living my life per se.
Right. Cool. Right on.
So, guys, there is a lot to cover on this week's podcast. JR, we've wanted to have you on for basically ever since we started the podcast. You have a lot of insight on different things, both, on the lanes and off the lanes. You're very well known, especially in the YouTube space. But the couple of topics that I just want to start the podcast off with before we get to the meat and gravy, I guess, of the show. A couple things that were announced since our last episode was that the PBA has decided to ban wrist supports that have plastic or steel in them for the PBA competition. Can we get your opinion and Mikey's opinion on that rule change?
Yeah, who wants to go first? Mike, you want to go? You go, and then I'll tell you how you're wrong.
I'll just say this. The last time I've seen somebody with success on the PBA tour with a supportive wrist brace was Mike Scroggins. I mean, you just don't see him anymore. So I don't think it's going to really do anything drastic in the PBA scene. So
no, but does it mean that rule shouldn't be in place? That's the question.
Well, okay. So is it to cut out the riffraff and guys that, just because they average 200 in league with it on, they can come out and bowl? I mean, I kind of understand, like, that's kind of the criteria, right? You have to have a certain average for so long. I mean, let's face it, with what we have to do to a bowling ball on tour, you're not really going to be able to do that with the wrist support. I mean, we have to be able to train to change tilt, rotation, axis, rev rate, speed, and you're kind of locked into one thing with a wrist brace. So I think it's more so helping people than it's hurting. And I don't know. JR, to be honest with you, man, I haven't seen a supportive wrist brace in competition, in a PBA competition, since I started bowling in the regional tour, which was 2015. So
I mean, you do see, there's a couple guys I can think of that do use them out on the regional tour. I don't think this rule affects the regional tour, though. I think it only affects the PBA national events.
It's only the PBA. It's not affecting the PBA 50, PBA regional, or PWB.
Right.
Strictly the PBA national tour.
Right. So, and at that point, a lot of people say, well, then what's the point? Because nobody on the PBA uses them, which is true. But I think it's a stepping stone. I think it sets the pace for anybody who thinks they're going to get to the PBA. It actually, in my opinion, gives them a blueprint of, okay, here's what you need to do. We're going to tell you that you can't use these devices, so that way you have to learn proper technique from the get-go, because it's all about technique. Rev rates technique, ball speeds technique, all that stuff. Everybody thinks, I don't have enough muscle, I have weak wrists. That has nothing to do with the game for the most part. You need a little bit of wrist strength, of course, but it's not like you have to be some bodybuilder or just a man. I mean, there's plenty of women who create lots of rev rate. I always use the example of people like Erin McCarthy. She's 90 pounds soaking wet, and she has, probably 350 RPM as a woman. So, and if you have 350 RPM, you can compete if you are accurate, if you are versatile, if you know what you're doing, if you know your bowling balls. You got guys like Norm Duke, who, he's below the 350 range, but yet the guy won twice last year. He made the show again this year at the Players Championship. So how are you going to say that, rev rate isn't that big of or is a big factor? And people think that these wrist guards are about creating rev rate and stuff. It's not really so much about that as it is the way I see it is somebody who is like an average bowler or has an average release can become and have a good release just by slipping on a device. That's the problem. So it's an integrity thing from the beginning. It's not saying that, well, if anybody, they're available to everybody, so why isn't anybody using them? Because once you get to a certain point, they do hinder you. Like Mikey said, you can't, I would think like 350 is probably your max. If you want to get your rev rate above that, you can't do it with a wrist brace on. You can't do it with all those restrictive things on your hand. It's not possible because it's all about the cup and the uncup and then the rotation with the fingers, how quick the thumb comes out of the ball. It's all those things combined that you just can't do with a wrist brace on. So when I think of the rule, I think it needs to be my kid's running around in circles, spinning with the dog in his hand. When I think of this rule, I think it needs to be universal for all of them, for USBC, from the bottom up. Anybody that's confused by this, you need to realize that it's not all wrist braces. It's just the ones with the metal bands. It's just the ones that are, positioners that you can change the position, change the tilt, change all that stuff on. So you can still use the ones to protect your wrist. You can still protect yourself. That's not a big deal. But I think it should be. I think USBC needs to adopt this and force these young kids, to learn proper technique. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting topic. I mean, I think that the majority of people that I saw, at least through social media, was that most of them said, you know what, it's really not going to play a big factor on the PBA National Tour, as we pretty much decided that it won't. I mean, there's not a lot of guys out there using them anyways, but it will be interesting to see how the USBC, like you mentioned, JR, adopts that rule and how they kind of grow from that rule. Does that mean that they're eventually going to ban all foreign, units on your hand, such as tape, such as turbo rev, finger thing? Is that going to be a stepping stone, or is it just strictly things that, like a wrist brace, that does help you manipulate your hand without you actually learning or having to do it yourself? So I think it's going to be a non-factor on the PBA Tour, but it could definitely, like you said, JR, be a stepping stone to see what rule changes do come into play for the USBC and all the other governing bodies of bowling around the world.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any other changes as far as, I've heard people saying the same thing, like, why wouldn't they get rid of knee braces? Well, because knee braces are a medical device. They're not something that improves your technique. Well, they give you better leverage and stuff. No, they make it to where you can move your knee and stay stable. That's it. It doesn't put you in a position automatically. That's the thing. Same thing with like putting tape in a ball. Jackson, stop. Goodness. It's the same thing with like putting tape in a ball. Putting tape in your ball does not give you a better release. All it does is change the time of when the ball comes off, and that's it. So there's a lot of things that people are using as an example, and it just doesn't make sense to me. The wrist guards are the only thing that really makes sense to me.
It's kind of the same idea as like an alignment stick in golf. Like an alignment stick or like a training aid in golf. Kind of the same idea. It gets you in the right position, but when it comes down to it, you can't really shape a golf ball with an alignment stick. You can't really shape a golf ball with like a training aid. It's kind of the same idea.
Why did they get rid of the belly putter? Because it took away from the technique of putting. That's why. So it automatically gave you technique and stability, where same thing with the wrist guard. It automatically gives you technique and stability. You can't do that. And they say, well, why wouldn't they ban two-handed bowling then? Well, because two-handed bowling is a technique. It's not a device that you're putting on your body. Well, your second hand is a device. No, that's a limb attached to your body. Like, seriously, you're using that in a technique. And anybody that doesn't think two-handed bowling is hard and it's just easy to just go up there and just chuck it down the lane and all you're doing is getting 500 RPM and you get to throw it wherever you want. No. Why do we not have more elite two-handed bowlers already? It's been what? How long has it been now? And we've got what? A handful of bowlers who are two-handed who are actually any good. And that's not taking anything away from anybody that throws it with two hands. But it's really, really difficult to become elite. It's really, really difficult to master that technique because there's a lot more moving parts and there's a lot more that goes into it than one-handed bowling. Just my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think those were all good points. And yeah, so that's a topic, like I said, that we'll see how it progresses throughout the PBA and USBC, CTF, like I said, all the governing bodies around the world for bowling. The next topic that I did want to bring up since our last podcast was Wes Malott has been selected to be inducted into the PBA Hall of Fame. Mikey and I actually had a talk about this last week. In my opinion, bowlers who get elected or chosen to be into the PBA Hall of Fame, there's no flukes there, right? Like, there's credentials, there's requirements for you to be inducted into the PBA Hall of Fame. I remember growing up watching Wes Malott during like the King of Bowling. You always saw him with the throne on, with the crown on. You saw him specifically just destroying multiple patterns. You picture Wes Malott, I can picture like 2 or 3 bowling balls that he used to throw on the TV shows, and those were like, if you see that bowling ball on a rack nowadays, you're like, oh, that's a ball that Wes Malott threw. What's your take on Wes Malott's career? Both of you guys, if you guys could, give a sentence or a word to describe Wes Malott's career, PBA Hall of Fame career, what would be the word or phrase that you guys would use?
I would say I think he's one of the more versatile guys that people don't give him enough credit for being versatile. Everybody always took he was always labeled the big nasty, the big guy that hooks it a bunch. But, a lot of the times when he was going straighter, I think he was actually better. When you get that gold IQ in his hand, which he still carries around to this day, he's really tough to beat. Like, that he's very, very difficult to beat, and it kind of, now that he just moved into our region, he's further north now in the Illinois area now. It kind of sucks because now he's going to be at a lot more events with us. So, I mean, he's kind of one of those guys that when I worked on my release and stuff, he was one of the guys that I looked at. Between him, Bill O'Neill, even Fagan a little bit, when you're trying to create smoothness and you're trying to create good rotation with some tilt, those are the first guys that come to mind. And they were always the guys that I went and I looked at YouTube and I watched, video after video of these guys releasing the ball and everything. And that's just kind of how I grew up learning how to release the ball. And I think I give a lot of credit to a lot of the past PBA guys for that, for kind of paving the way and teaching the release. Nobody really taught it, but anybody that was smart enough to go and look and learn from what you saw, then, you could kind of do something with it. Cause I was just, like most of those guys, you grow up being self-taught. You don't get much coaching and stuff. I pretty much taught myself to bowl, and now I'm teaching everybody else to bowl, for the most part. So it's the progression of how it goes.
All right. How about you, Mikey? What would you say is a good word or phrase to describe Wes's career?
Oh man, I always defined him as the cheetah killer, and he was always at 15 and left, throwing some shiny pearl ball out to 1, 2, 3, and averaging something above 240. It seemed like. I kind of came at the end of his career, so like the last couple things I saw of Wes Malott was obviously like the king of the hill and stuff like that. But I agree with JR 100%. The release that Wes Malott has is straight butter. It is so clean, and it looks. JR, you can correct me on this.
Yeah, I'm not a butter fan. I don't.
Well, you like butter?
Let's go Crisco.
All right. I see a lot of Chris Prather's release and Wes Malott's release, or vice versa. How their fingers and their index finger sit underneath the ball, and how their thumb kind of goes over the top of it. I see a lot, and they both laid into the lane so unbelievably well. But yeah, definitely the smooth release is the first thing I think of when I see Wes Malott. And the calmness of his shoulders and his upper body, there's not extra movement. It's a very fluid. He's just a shot maker, man. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. I think Wes, like we said before, I mean, I think all three of us, we have different opinions on how we know Wes or how we remember his career, but it's all things that attribute to him. It's all his attributes that he has combined together as a whole arsenal, and that's what makes him a PBA Hall of Famer. He's done everything that I can think of as far as bowling goes, being just a common factor on the PBA tour. So I think that there's a lot of people obviously deserving of PBA Hall of Fame credentials or status at least, and Wes Malott is definitely one of the guys that should be there, and now he is going to be there.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
So now comes the fun part of the podcast. Now, as we are filming this or recording this, I should say, it's Monday night. The weekend has just went by with the Pba Players Championship. The winners so far have been Graham Fall taking down the East region, Tommy Jones taking down the South region, Arturo Quintero taking down the Southwest region. What am I missing? Oh yes, the South or the West is happening right now, but the biggest story so far this weekend has been the Midwest region finals, where Sean Rash took home the win in very dramatic fashion. So there was a situation where Sean Rash was unhappy about things that were happening on the lanes, / kind of off the lanes. And it was well heard that he had made some comments. And I want to get your guys' opinions on that. Obviously, it's a very hot topic right now. I scrolled through Facebook today, and all I saw was Sean Rash this, Sean Rash that, this and that, all about this, topic that's going on here. And what is your guys' opinions, obviously, on this controversy, on this topic? Whoever wants to go first, feel free to.
It's all you, Mikey.
Oh,
Hey, I did almost a 3-hour live stream yesterday about this whole thing. So oh, did you? Oh, so now you know most. Okay, so but I have some additional information. Sean called me on my way to the shop this afternoon, so I have a little bit more of insight from everything that happened after talking to him. So I'm gonna let you go first. I'm gonna go shut my kid up for a second.
Okay. All right. The controversy that's going on in the comment he made about integrity in the 3-0 or the 3 for 3. I'm guessing that has to do with the 3 Brunswick staffers.
Nope.
That happened. So it wasn't with Tommy and Graham, and then going to be. Was it with the majors? Okay. Well, then I'm kind of lost in the 3-0 because I thought what he was getting at was the 3 EBI / Brunswick staffers that were going to win all the regions up to that point.
All right, let's take it here. All right, before we start actually talking about the topic of what was said, like the actual background of the comments that were said. Do you think that his reaction as a professional bowler, as a professional athlete on TV was called for, uncalled for? Should have been handled differently? We've seen stuff like this in the past in the bowling world. This isn't the first time that something has been called out, something that has been said on TV that left people mind blown. How do you guys feel about his reaction and the way he went about it? Let's just start there.
All right, so I think nobody's going to say, or at least most people won't say that they agree with how he handled it. I just don't. I don't think that's the platform for that. But I will defend him in one area. The issue at hand that he's talked about for over 2 years now is he feels like it's kind of not being addressed. There's an issue that he doesn't like, that he's been trying to take care of behind the scenes in the proper ways. He feels like it hasn't been. And things continue to happen. And so it led to a blow up here on top of, with his daughter having some issues at home and stuff, and, all the emotional stuff he's had to deal with. It just kind of led to a blow up there, him not bowling his best game. And, we all as bowlers kind of look for some kind of an outlet of some sort. And I think if he could do it all over again, I think he would kind of hold his breath a little bit there, because I did just get word there was a punishment for it, and I finally saw what actually happened there. But we'll get into that later. But I don't agree with how he did it, but I'm not going to tell him he's wrong for wanting to stand up for what he believes. And I think we're in a day and age right now where we're being told too much that we just have to shut up and bowl for the most part, that we're not allowed to speak our minds. We're not allowed to say anything. And that's one of the things that, is going on in a lot of professional sports right now. It's all a lot of politics and stuff, to where they don't want you to say certain things because they're running them more like businesses instead. And I'm not saying this about the PBA, by the way, because I don't want to get fined myself, but I'm saying this more in sports in general. Sports are ran as businesses now. And so, they don't want their players running around bad mouthing their sport and stuff, or making things look bad. So that's why the fines and all that type of stuff are there. But I think in his defense, he just simply got fed up with what was being dealt with, and he finally just kind of blew a gasket a little bit. And most people are misunderstood where it was directed. It wasn't directed at Russo. It wasn't directed at any player. It was just simply an issue that is behind the scenes right now, and that's that.
All right. And Mikey, how do you feel about the reaction about, how he handled it? Obviously, not ideal situation. Obviously, we only see what we see on TV. But what's your take on the reaction and everything?
I'll just say this: losing sucks. Absolutely. Especially having the weekend he just had. I mean, the dude bowled phenomenal, and losing sucks. I agree with JR. Maybe was there a better way to handle that? Yes, but when you're in the heat of the moment and there's an elephant in the room that has been there for a while. Sometimes one thing leads to another, and it just happens. Emotions just boil over. So, I mean, obviously there's probably a better place to do it, but at the same time too, I get why it happened. So,
yeah, and so I'm just gonna put this out because I don't have.
Man down.
I don't have. I'm not a very controversial person. In general, I don't like to try to pick fights. I don't post a lot on social media about situations and everything like that.
Me neither.
Sure. I've liked Sean Rash since I was basically started watching the pro tour when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. He was actually close with one of the owners of the bowling alley that I bowled with. Every time I've messaged him, he's reached right back out to me saying, "Hey, dude, thanks. Hey, I appreciate that. Hey, everything's all good." I reached out to him today, and he had just said, "Hey, man, like, with all due respect, I'm just going to hold off on doing anything until after next week." And he was polite about it, sent me a message. It was all good, nothing against him. That being said, I think that in general, there's places to handle things. There's places that things can be said or things that shouldn't be said. And obviously, like I mentioned before, there's always things going on behind the scenes that you might not realize, right? So if somebody goes out and wins, even let's say just a small sweeper, we've all bowled the Ryan Regan sweepers. We've all seen the competition there. If somebody goes out and bowls a Regan sweeper and loses their mind cheering and starts crying, it might not just because, they won a sweeper. Maybe it's because someone that, they have close to them might have just passed away, or that they, struggled for a long time. They flew over an injury, and they just proved to themselves that they could win a tournament, regardless of what that tournament is. There's always emotions and background stories involved in competition, in athletes. And like JR, you said, we see it all the time. So my opinion on the situation is that Rash, I bet you if you asked him, said he would probably admit, like, hey, you know what, I maybe screwed up there, but I still stand behind, what the thought behind that process was, which is totally fine. He's an athlete. He's allowed to do what he did in a way, because he just let out his emotion as an athlete and as a person. Mistakes happen, things happen, and sometimes you have to let it go. So that's my fair take on it. That being said, so there was comments that I've seen kind of been up in the air. And again, I'm not trying to bash any company, or I'm not trying to get into anything like that, but there's been a meaning behind what was said. And I do not want to speculate. I do not want to put a rumor out there. I do not want to do anything like that. But, Jared, what have you heard was the reasoning behind those comments?
So the entire thing was all about the purple ball, the purple hammer. Sean's belief.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what? I'm confused.
Oh yeah. I've been beat by that ball a couple times, JR.
Oh well, I'm gonna continue to do it too until they tell me I can't use it. So, I mean, it is what it is. As of right now, it's deemed legal. So, the controversy behind the whole thing is Sean feels that the ball's still not legal. He feels like the ball should be taken out of play, and the reason for it is because you all know the controversy that happened. What was it? Almost 2 years ago now, where they went and started testing the durometer readings of all these balls that were, purple hammers in the EBI days, and a few of them did come out illegal, and it led to a rule change where you actually where they changed the durometer, specs that, it went up from, I think it was 072 to 073 or something like that. So they went up a point, changed the rules. Sean says he knows for a fact that some of the newer ones that are being made by Brunswick are too soft again. I can't I can't speak to whether that's true or not because I haven't seen it myself. But all I do know is right now they are deemed legal. They are legal to use. People are going to continue to use them, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. I was one of the guys at first that I was kind of against them too. Honestly, I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. Everybody's using these balls everywhere. Until you finally get the mentality of, I can't beat them. I'm going to join them. So I finally figured out how to use them. I drilled a couple myself and figured out how to use them. And now I use them as much as I possibly can because they are a great tool. And I love beating the hell out of Mikey with them. So it's it's fun. No, but he thinks there needs to be more done to figure the whole thing out. And I think where the whole thing is, and this is just speculation, I don't know for sure, but I think what's been happening is because USBC and the PBA did all their investigation and everything the first time, and now it's being brought up again. I think they're kind of looking at it like, look, we've already went through this. We're not going to go through it again. And I think Sean's mad about that because he still believes that there are illegal bowling balls being used. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, if they're just a little bit softer, who cares? It's because we don't have enough data. We don't know for sure if those few durometer reading points are making that much of a difference in ball reaction. What I can tell you, I promise you, the new ones from Mexico, technically, those ones do hook more than the old ones did back in the day. They're earlier and they continue to shape a lot more. Is that a product of being softer? I can't tell you that. I have no idea. I can only tell you what I see. Just like when I do ball reviews, I can only tell you what I see, and I'm only going to tell you how I feel about it. The ball hooks more. The ball shapes more. Plain and simple. If they're softer, they're softer. If they're not, they're not. Sean feels they should be doing another investigation, and they need to figure out how to take care of this issue because he's not the only one. He's just the only one speaking up about it. There's a lot of guys that are out there that feel the same way. They're kind of getting sick and tired of getting beat up by these bowling balls, especially when they don't have the option to throw those bowling balls. Now, in Sean's defense, again, I sound like I'm trying to defend the guy a ton. Kind of am because I, see a lot of the same stuff he does. But, at one point he was on staff and was able to throw those balls, and he still felt the same way. He still felt like those balls were junk and he didn't want to use them, and he thought they were illegal, So it's not that he couldn't throw them. He was able to at one point, and now they've got the UC3, which, he'll tell you they're not urethane. So, but that thing is stupid. That ball hooks and does some crazy stuff down lane, but either way, this isn't a discussion about bowling balls, but that's just kind of how it is. That's where the whole thing is. Now, as far as the 3-for-3 thing, I don't know what that meant. Honestly, I don't know. I just know it had nothing to do with the companies. It had nothing to do with any of the companies or anything like that. So,
yeah. All right. And Mikey, just before you jump in there, I try to make this as clear as possible. Right? There's a lot of discussion that's always going to be had. I mean, we just had a brief discussion about this, right? Like, bowling is such a niche sport that any small factor, anything like that is always going to be brought up. Anything that happens in the bowling world, anything that people start to see in the bowling world, if there's enough traction behind it, it will be brought up. It'll be discussion, and people will react to the way that they did. So the fact that, you're able to get some insight, and again, I'm not saying which way, whether or not I agree, I disagree. I don't have an input because I don't have enough of the backstory about the situation as you do, JR. But I do like the fact that I think that there's a lot of people who reacted to yesterday's situation on social media. I think a lot of people posted things out there that, they posted just in the heat of the moment.
And it's
like
trash.
How Rash reacted. Yeah,
honestly.
Rash reacted in the heat of the moment. He reacted in live person. People reacted on social media. I think that an important thing, especially in the bowling world, is that if you know a lot of people, you have a lot of people on social media, maybe just take a deep breath before you post something as a reaction to something that you saw. Just, think about it before you post it, because as soon as you post it, it's out there forever. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way social media works. Some people like to pick controversy, post anything that they feel like talking about, not mentioning any names, JR. But, it's things that if you think about it and you're okay with posting it, post it. It's going to tell you that, you shouldn't, because guess what? It's your social media. And if you want to post it. But as far as reacting to something that happens, maybe just take a deep breath first. That's all. I want to post out there to everybody who were posting stuff yesterday on social media.
I would agree to an extent of taking a deep breath and people trying to understand situations better first and before they react to them. Yes. My issue with all of this stuff is, when you talk about somebody who's relatively famous or who's put in the limelight in the sport, and I'm even going to throw my own hat in there because now I've had to deal with it an awful lot too. And
really?
People have to, people for some reason, they hold you up on this pedestal. And it was explained to me like this by a good friend of mine. He said, people hold people who they technically look up to at a higher standard. They hold them at a higher standard than what they hold themselves. They cannot act in a manner of being this perfect person, but because they see you all over social media, all over YouTube, all over TV, they hold you to this standard that says you have to act perfect in this manner. If you don't, I'm going to trash you all over social media. So these people who are sitting here and saying all this garbage and calling them a crybaby and this and that, and there's people that are going as far as trying to say, like the rumor you guys, were just starting to kind of talk about a little bit before. I think it's because of, 3 Brunswick people winning, and somebody said something about, he's complaining because he thinks the lane men are setting up the lanes for the Brunswick staffers. Where does this stuff even come from? Like, honestly, where does it even come from? People just kind of make stuff up and they assume, and it gets blown out of proportion. And like the whole crybaby thing, it's like, I get called a crybaby all the time, and I actually call it bitch to win because it works. It works. It seriously works if you don't use. Sorry, excuse my language. I forgot I'm on somebody else's show, not my own. So, because I don't care what I say on my show, but to all the mommies and the babies and the baby daddies and all that. Lord, we apologize for the words that are coming out of my mouth. No, so. It's people calling all these names and then just trashing these people and just it gets out of hand. The pedestal you're thrown on, expecting you to act perfect. And I've made it known from the beginning of everything that I've always done. I haven't changed. I'm going to tell you how I feel. You're always going to know how I feel, and I'm not going to hold back. And honestly, I think a lot of my following and stuff has come because of that, because of the ability of people being able to look and say, you know what, at least he's going to be honest. Because I'll tell you right now, for every one person that complains or calls me a whiner or says, I don't appreciate or like the way you talk, I lose that follower and gain 10 more who appreciate everything I do. 100%. And Sean's the same way. Look at Pete Weber. Look at some of these guys that, Eugene McCune, Tom Hess, people that are punching themselves in the face and throwing fits and yelling at other bowlers in front of all these people. Like these people see that and they say, he's such a mental head case. He can't even hold it together while he's bowling. And they have no idea how we actually handle. Mikey, we had this conversation before. People have no idea how bowlers are, or how bowlers are different from one another. They're, for some reason, I think somebody wrote a book and they said, you know what, in order to be mentally strong, you have to go throw a shot, turn around, look like a robot, sit down and shut up. What? Who came up with that? Like, seriously, who started teaching that? Because that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, honestly.
Obviously, Eugene didn't read that book.
No, neither did Tom, neither did I, neither did you. We don't follow that book at all. Like, it's not going to happen. You want to see somebody blow up? Force me to hold my emotions in for an entire block and watch what happens by the end.
Yeah.
There'll be a bowling ball through a window. Like, seriously. Like, you think I'm joking, but if I hold in my emotions, if I don't talk to myself, if I don't get mad, if I'm not cussing myself out, if I'm not doing something like that, it's a bad block. Like, you should check on me. If I'm completely quiet during a block and I'm not saying anything and my scores aren't good and I'm just being quiet, clear out. Seriously. Either first check on me, tap me on the shoulder, bro, I've been noticing you're not yourself. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. If I say, yeah, I'm good, just leave. Just leave, because you don't know what's going to happen. Honestly, it could be anything. And that's a lot of guys. A lot of guys are the same way. A lot of guys, they have to. Eugene said it best when I talked to him with the players. He has to let it out, because if he holds it in, it's going to turn into something nasty. And he's just going to bowl worse. Every time he tries to keep cool, keep calm, collected, and show that he's got this, in quotes, good mental game. I don't know where that came from. He bowls like garbage, 100% every time. And I'm the same way. So, you just, all these people out here listening, do stop. I understand holding people up on a pedestal and thinking that they should act better in certain situations. But, until you're in that situation, you have no idea how people would or should act. You can judge people based on what they say and all that and say, I don't agree with that. But to go on social media and blast them and call them babies and this and that, like, I think it says more about the people saying those things than it does about the person that reacted, So that's just my opinion, because I've had to deal with it. So.
Fair enough. So, Mikey, let's get your take on this situation. What's your feeling about everything that has been said about the comments? Let's get your opinion on it.
First of all, I want to thank JR for clearing up that 3 for 3 thing, because I'm not gonna lie, I was lost too, and the only thing I could chalk it up was to the prior wins. Anyways, I'll just start first with the idea of the pedestal, holding people on a pedestal. I get that. What people have to also understand too is that when you have an athlete who competes for a living, because a lot of these guys do. Unfortunately, I'm not good enough to compete for a living. I just do it as a hobby right now. But even people who do it for a hobby, there's an intensity that comes about when you're competing for PBA regional tour titles. It doesn't matter what it is. And there is a switch that is flipped, and you're not your normal self. You are completely different. I've noticed that as of lately. I carry more intensity with me when I bowl. And if anybody sees me when I'm bowling, I look like I'm mad. I promise I'm just in the heat of the moment. I'm not mad at anything really in the world. I'm just there to compete. So I get what JR is talking about there with the holding up on the pedestal. I'm sure there's been a regional or two in this past year where if people saw me for a shot or two, they think I was a jerk or I wasn't a nice guy. It's just because in the heat of the moment, I was fired up. But with that being addressed to the purple ball, before I go into any of this, I want to say this. I'm not a hater of the purple hammer. I'm just need to find a way to beat it. That's what I need to do. I think that the purple hammer is an awesome bowling ball. I think it shows the value in having a bowling ball that you can make go from A to B in the most conservative way possible, allowing yourself the best chance to either get 9 or strike. I will say that there's a couple times where I watched JR outhook me with the purple hammer while I was throwing reactive. And the one instance I'll bring up is Columbus, the regional in Columbus this year. It was game 4. I had to bowl JR, and I switched to a Venom Fatal, and I was at 14 at the arrows. JR was throwing a purple at 19, and I went, what's going on?
Bro, you got to put little fingers in the ball, son. You got to learn how to hook it.
Because something out of my brain. Now, I will say this. If they're making purples like that and making them legal, I tip my cap to whoever's engineering that bowling ball, because that is that is a good stinking bowling ball because I wish I had one. I've been trying to figure out a way to beat it all year. I think this also too pushes other, if it is legal, push other companies to focus on creating a better urethane bowling ball to create somewhat of the same motion to keep up, because that bowling ball is dominant. I mean, let's be real. If you get a lefty with any type of room whatsoever with that ball in his hands, it's going to be really, really hard to beat it.
Well, before there's speculation, before anybody, starts saying that we're talking about saying that this thing's legal or not legal, because we keep saying if it's legal, we're gonna stop saying if it's legal, because as of right now, it is legal. There is nothing that says it's not. So we're going to continue to assume that it is legal until somebody says otherwise. So it is a legal bowling ball for those listening.
I believe it is legal personally. I'm just going off of what the rumor is. I think it actually is good for bowling personally. It gives a little spice to it because people seem to get a little fired up when they see somebody with a purple hammer in their hands. But me as a competitor, I want to beat it. It's a really good bowling ball, and guys that are good at throwing bowling balls, if they put that ball in their hand and it's close, game on. And Jared will tell you the same thing. And I will say that if since that ball is legal, whoever engineered it knocked it out of the park. And I feel like that is something that other bowling ball companies, if they want to beat it, they're going to have to find something to keep up personally.
They're trying. They're failing, but they're trying.
It's a ball that matches up really well. It's a good ball. And I think unfortunately, because a lot of the success you see with it comes from the left side, with Jacob Butcher from now Graham Fa, he threw it at the RPI, ran everybody over. The ruck, he threw it, looked really good. So I think a lot of times it's just because when a lefty makes a show, it's, sometimes or most of the time it's with the throw, and people want to throw the hat right at that immediately and say, oh, look, only because of this ball, So, but that's another conversation. But personally, I don't hate it. I think it's really cool that it's causing this much, hype. I just want to beat it because JR beat me enough with it this year.
Attention of any kind is good attention for bowling. I don't care if it's controversial or not. It's got to be talked about. Getting bowling talked about is a good thing. So the punishment for Rash was he was fined an undisclosed amount, placed on 1 year probation, and will be suspended from one PBA National Tour event in February for conduct unbecoming a professional. I mean, it is what it is. That's what happened. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily, but I promise you, Tom Clark is looking at this whole thing and he's saying, yes. Like, controversy is good. Let's go. And I'm sure he was mad at, Sean, and he thought about it and he's like, yeah, this probably isn't a great look, but people are going to talk about bowling. Like, bowling is going to get talked about. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter at this point. Like with Pete Weber, that's what always happens. He's out there crotch chopping and telling people to S my S, stuff. and people were mad at him, and people were, he's not a professional bowler, but they were talking about him. ESPN was talking about him. People were talking about him, so I mean, this isn't going to get ESPN or anybody talking about Sean Rash, but it gets a lot. Look at what happened on social media. Look how much that blew up. Look how much people are talking about bowling. Now, how many people see that and they're like, dang, I want that opportunity to look like an asshole on TV. Like I've always said, the next show I make, I'm going to take the ball return thing off and chuck it down lane if I lose. Hold me to it. I'm just kidding. I won't actually do it, but.
You guys are hearing a pause here on the gutter that J.R. Raymond's next show, he will be getting fined and suspended indefinitely.
I think I probably will be fined for something. I just haven't figured out what I'm going to do because you got to bring some controversy in. Maybe I'll take a water bottle up.
I have a question for JR. I have a serious question for you. So you've got a chance to throw the new and old purples. Do you have a preference? The older pours that were made in Kentucky or the newer pours down in Mexico?
My old one goes straight now. Literally.
Really?
It goes straight. Yeah. Compared to the new ones, my old one goes straight. Yep. And maybe because it's that old now that, I just don't use it anymore, but it goes awfully straight compared to the new one. Maybe I just need to throw it back on the Haas machine and take it back down to like 80 grit and call it good. So
I would like to put this out there on the podcast for everybody who's listening. Geographical location of where you make a bowling ball does actually change how it rolls, which is insane to me. Because people want to say they didn't use the right formula or whatever. I guarantee you, they used the same exact thing in Mexico as they used in Kentucky, and they just couldn't make them the same. And it's all because of geographical location. So there's a little.
Warmer temperature from Kentucky to Mexico. You're going to Mexico to make bowling balls, and the humidity and the heat and stuff like that. There's just a lot of elements that can go and come into play when it comes to that stuff. So, I'm no expert on that stuff. I'm just kind of assuming in that area, but same thing like with bowling.
Your elevation makes a difference.
Yeah. So that's why storm balls go so far down lane. They're so much taller in Utah. Higher elevation.
And that's one thing. So I was actually talking with a couple of guys at Motive about that, and I always said, like, I love designing bowling balls when I was like 7, 8 years old, like designing by like picking colors and doing like logos and coming up with names. Like that was what I loved doing. But the guys that are actually designing bowling balls, the engineering science that goes behind it, I could never fathom the amount of detail, the amount of calculations that have to go into designing and creating. Like, you can design all the bowling balls you want, but if you cannot manufacture them to the proper standard or the way that you need it to go, it's never going to do anything. So the way that they're able to calculate how to get the bowling balls to do exactly what they want to is just insane. And like I said, that's why I tip my hat to anybody who has changed the game with bowling balls. And that's why I love the guys at Motive, is because they're so dedicated to creating new technology, to creating a new ball motion, to creating new equipment for us to throw and be successful with. Mm-hmm. So I think that the understanding of how to design bowling balls and understanding how bowling balls are made in general is, I think, crucial for anybody to take a look at and try to understand, because it will almost play a factor on, what bowling balls could match up best for you.
You guys ever drill a ball and absolutely love it, and then drill another one and drill it the exact same way and it rolls like dog crap, and then you drill another one and drill it the same way and it rolls like dog crap? I did that with, like, there's probably been 4 or 5 balls that I absolutely loved, and it was only the original one that I loved. The rest of them I didn't. And that plays into exactly what you were talking about with, the chemical makeup and all that. And everybody always asks, well, how come all these companies can't figure out just what's in the Purple Hammer and all that? Well, because it's not like you can reverse engineer these balls, because, right, you're heating these things up. You're putting all these elements together, heating them up, and then creating the outside cover of the bowling ball. You can't, like, heat it back up and split all that up and try to figure out what's in it. It's just not possible, because when you're taking, let's call it 10 different elements, and you're putting them together and you heat them up, now maybe it comes out to just 4 different elements. Now you're missing a bunch of different stuff, because 2 being mixed with 3 equals this. And, there's just so much that goes into it that you just can't do those things and you can't figure it out. That's why the Purple Hammer is the Purple Hammer, but look at, like, the Black Hammer. The Black Hammer was just like all other companies' urethanes. And then the Purple Hammer came out and it's like completely different. So. Right.
And that's one thing, that we see with companies, is the evolution of the bowling balls that they make. We look at Motive. They went from having the OG tank, which was a true urethane, to, the tank Rampage, the Rebel. Then they have, like, the Microtol polymer with the Desert, the Tank Blitz, the Cobra tank, which I love that line. And then we have the Purple tank, which is true urethane. And then if you were watching the Players Tour, you may have seen a new edition. But that's the thing with these companies, is that they're constantly evolving, trying to figure out how to make the next bowling ball in that same line be even better than the original. And it takes so much understanding, like you said, of doing that, even from ball to ball. But trying to advance that line is, difficult enough to create what they want to. I do want to take this moment right here to let everybody know that Belmo did beat Buttriff in the final, so he will be moving on to the Players Championship.
There, beat a Purple Hammer. How about that? Purple Hammer goes down.
It is all set for the Pba Players Championship. So I guess there's not too much more to talk about the same subject. So who do you guys think is going to take it down next weekend for the Pba Players?
I'm rooting for Sean. Screw it. I just want to see him say something stupid again. That'd be awesome.
Mikey, I think you might have the same pick, but who do you have?
Oh man! So hearing what you just told me. So by the way, Jr., we had this talk DJ and I did before this, and I picked Belmo to win the West, and he's like, "Oh, he hasn't been in competition for centuries. He's out of shape."
He's the best bowler in the world.
Thank you.
Like, how do you not pick Belmo?
I simply said that he had made it very clear that he was kind of anxious and very excited to be back bowling on the PBA after like 200 and something days of not competing on the PBA.
That's what you
So,
want.
in my opinion,
he's gonna win.
in my opinion, I thought that he was not going to finish it off. So that's just, I mean, that was what I said. I'll stand behind it, and I got proven wrong. It is what it is.
Here, I'm gonna tell you what. I got one more thing for you guys. If you guys want controversy, here you go.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Be safe with this.
So-
we're not trying to get
Nope.
into any fights.
I'm not gonna mention anything as far as companies go. But here's one topic that if somebody were to talk about this, you would piss off a lot of companies.
Okay.
Do you think that all these bowling balls that are coming out of these factories are coming out as perfect spheres, perfect circles, perfect round objects? Do you think there's flat spots on these bowling balls? Because they all claim that they come out, because you see how they're made with the lathe and everything, and they're spun. And do you think, I'm telling you they don't. You know how I know they don't? Because I've done the testing and everything on it. So they don't. So there's that. That plays into why you can drill a ball, you could love it, and then you can drill that exact same ball and hate it because there's flat spots in certain spots. You can't see them because they're just super small flat spots, but they're there, and they cause problems, big problems.
I will say, and actually I'm going to take this time real quick just to shout out Motive Bowling because we have Raymond graphics, and I know that it is a super advanced technology. I know that a lot of people have wanted to buy the technology, they'll license the technology, they've wanted to try and duplicate the technology, and Motive is the only company that does not etch their logos into bowling balls.
Yeah.
Besides obviously like visible and stuff like that. But I will stand behind the fact that that Motive has a technology that no other company has been able to duplicate yet. So that is my opinion on that.
Well, I think they've pretty much cornered the market on that too. They patented it, I'm pretty sure. So yeah. I think they did it the only way you can do it. So there's not really ever going to be a way to manipulate, to duplicate it. I don't think, because with the anchor system that they use, it's just, if you've ever drilled into a Motive ball, I'm a pro shop guy. Like, I'm drilling into those logos. I'm like, how the hell did they do this? And so I'm looking at these anchors and I'm like, oh, I got it now. I see how they do it. It's not, it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult, but nobody can duplicate it because they patented it from my understanding.
Yeah.
I got one more for DJ too that he may not understand. Hey DJ, did you know that on some bowling balls where they mark the center of gravity, that may not actually be where the center of gravity is on the bowling ball?
Or the PSA.
Or the PSA?
No.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fun little tidbit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. So anybody listening, you guys are learning some interesting facts that you probably have never heard before.
How about white bowling balls and how they hook so much earlier than any other color? Or yellow bowling balls? But color doesn't matter.
I got into a little controversy or a little spat with a guy at League. He pulled out, it was a bright orange bowling ball. And I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, that's not a good bowling ball. I was like, it's soft. And he goes, what do you mean? I was like, trust me, dude. Like, that ball compared to the black bowling ball you're throwing, you're going to notice a difference. He's like, no. The colors don't play a difference. I was like, I will bet my entire bank account that colors play a difference in bowling balls. It's been tested on. Now's the time. So I was like, that will be a different bowling ball than what you think.
I hate white bowling balls. I hate them. I've never seen a white bowling ball that didn't hook early. Like, like the I'm not even gonna say a name. Never mind. We're not gonna talk about just a white bowling ball. The white bowling balls hook early. Same thing with bright yellow bowling balls. It's just, or big bright green bowling balls. Come on, man.
the Forza Redline was one of the most angular bowling balls I've ever thrown in my life, and that ball wasn't even supposed to be that angular. It was just bright yellow.
I can't confirm that. That ball was sick. I do that ball all the time during college. It was so bright.
JR, you're missing out, man. You know, you get to throw all these, like, you get to throw 50 different brands of bowling balls, and you're missing out on the OG, like, Octane.
Bro, ouch! My dog just bit my toe. I was on motive staff well before you kids were around on this stuff.
Oh,
So
man.
I was on motive staff back in like 2009 when the TR2s were out and you know, all that stuff. That what was that? There was the one with the silver ball with the gear core.
Recon.
That's a Recon.
There was a Recon. No, it was another one too. GX1 or something like that. GT1. That ball revved up so fast. That ball was stupid on wood lanes, but it went straight on everything else. But it was stupid good on wood lanes. Like there was a couple of balls, like the TR2. I led the state masters with the TR2. I was hooking the lane from left gutter to the right gutter, and everybody else was playing up 5. And I'm hooking the lane with a TR2. Like it was crazy. I only stayed on staff 1 year. The one thing I remember when I was on motive staff was, you know, it was like it was right when Spangler was, you know, there, of course. And I know he's still there, but it was the beginning of Spangler. And we were at the Masters, and I qualified, and I was bowling match play. And that was when the Cruel came out, the original Cruel. And that ball, that ball made some cool motions, man. I was bowling Chris Barnes, and I had my TR2 with me. Spangler took this ball, and I had to be a 180 pad, and he just went ham on this sumbitch. He just freaking went crazy on this thing, and it was a snowball. And where he's like, you know what? We are just going to take Barnes out of his element, and we're going to throw it up the middle of the lane. We're going to trash it, and you're going to beat him at that game. I bowled 730. He bowled like 560. And then I proceeded to get ran over because that was my second match of the first day. So I was automatically in the winner's bracket going into the next day. And then I got ran over by my next. Smallwood shot like 780 on me, and then Devaney shot like 760. I was like, well, that was fun. See you later. But it was cool. That's like the one story I do remember when I was on motive staff.
It's awesome.
Brett's a good guy. We love Brett.
He's a good dude.
Do want to take a moment just real quick to shout out all the sponsors. So Turbo Grips, you can head on over to turbogrips.com for all your bowling accessory needs, your slip grips, finger inserts. Beaver Buzz Energy, as JR quickly mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you can head on over to beaverbuzz.com for all your energy drink needs.
Beaver.
You can head on over to Buddy's Pro Shop and go to the Get My Specs section of the website where you can send in a bowling ball. They'll match it directly to the bowling ball that you send them, and they'll drill you a brand new bowling ball and ship it back to you. And then Mint Sportswear, head on over to mintsportswear.com. You can get a full line of custom jerseys, stock jerseys. They have a ton of designs there. And then again, obviously we've mentioned it a few times already, but Motive Bowling, head to motivebowling.com. Go visit your local pro shop. Get the new bowling balls that we have coming out. The recently announced Jackal made a debut on the TV shows this week. So don't forget to check that out. I think it's March 9th is the worldwide release date. So just don't forget to head on over to Motive Bowling or visit your local pro shop. JR, Mikey, who do you guys want to shout out? Plug your Instagram, your TikToks, anything like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mikey.
Me first?
Sure.
Obviously, I want to thank Motive Bowling and then Mint Sportswear as well. I want to thank, Competitive Edge Pro Shop, Brian, everything he does for me, and then Parkway Lanes and everybody there helps me out a bunch. Also want to say this too before we get off this is that if anybody has any type of thoughts on JR, I will just say this. Even if JR and I don't agree on some things, if I have any type of question or concern during bowling, about bowling, JR is the first man I go to because I know the opinion he's going to give me is true, or is honest, and he's not going to sugarcoat anything. He is a good man that means good things, although some people don't like that. But
Nobody likes the truth.
JR's fun to talk to when you have questions, that's for sure.
I will agree with that. JR, you and I have met a few times in person. We actually tied for, I think, the last cash spot at a regional back in like 2016, 2017. And I remember you and I were both pretty pissed. I think our bowling bags were out in our trunks pretty quickly after. I think we both shot one night.
Did mine make it in my trunk, or did they go into a river?
I think it was close. It was kind of like when the Olympic guy shot put. It was just kind of flying through the air a little bit longer than I expected it to be. But JR, I mean, I see you on social media, and again, I'm not a huge fan of social media, but I do know that you speak your mind, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. And I know for a fact, anytime I mention a motive bowling ball, as far as reviews, everybody at my league or whoever I'm talking to be like, well, hey, JR said on his video. Well, hey, JR said on his video. So I do appreciate that. And thank you because it gets a lot of people interested in it. It's definitely informative for a lot of guys who are looking for new bowling balls, specifically motive balls. So just want to say thanks for doing everything that you do. But go ahead and plug your social medias and everything.
Well, speaking of the reviews and everything, anybody can go see those over at bowlerx.com. You can see all the bowling balls over there. I don't want to take away from bowling. Your what was it? Bowling Buddies? Is that one of your sponsors or Buddies Pro Shop?
Buddies Pro Shop. Don't
want to take away from them, but Bowler X does a lot of the same stuff there. And my pro shop is actually Bowler X over in Waterford. So we're in Waterford Lanes. So I have to say thank you to Waterford Lanes just because that place has made me so much better over the last year because the lane surface there is just so old. It's weird. It's early friction. And that's exactly what you see all the time on tour is old, weird, early friction. So it works out perfect.
Right?
What's that?
That's where J-Rob's at, right?
Who?
John Robertson. No?
Mm,
All right, never mind.
I probably would know the person if I saw them, but I don't know the name.
Awkward silence.
Well, the name threw me off. I wasn't expecting that. But who is Mint? Who does Mint sportswear on that stuff? Who is that?
So his name's Hadley. He's the owner, but that's a sub guy Jersey
Right.
Company out of the UK.
Okay, well, have them get a hold of me if you guys have connections because I need somebody to sponsor some shirts and stuff for my reviews and stuff. So have them get a hold of me so I have some shirts, some different stuff because I'm tired of nothing against logo like these are like 3 years old now or 2 years old now, and I got to get some new stuff made and everything. So if they want some exposure, we can get them some exposure there too. So, but yeah, so
Heck yeah.
Is that it? That's all you have?
sure.
Your TikTok?
I mean,
Yeah. Can't wait to bowl against you next weekend, JR.
yeah. I mean, so all my sponsors: Storm, Roto Grip, 900 Global, Brunswick, Brands of Brunswick, Motive, everybody. Those are all my sponsors, So sponsored by the world. Thank you, me. I appreciate me. So.
JR, I
Jackson,
appreciate you
Jack
hopping
for all
on.
the support.
Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on. Always great to hear from somebody else who's way more involved in situations that we might not have the privilege to be involved in. So anytime that you want to hop on the podcast, anytime that you do something stupid on TV, feel free to message us.
I will be there. Stupid things is my forte.
And,
Yeah, you want stupid? Go to my TikTok. There you go.
Oh, goodness.
That's where all the politics and stuff's talked about. It's amazing. I have fun with that. You guys want to know about politics and sports and arguments and stuff? TikTok's where to go. Yes, you got to brush your
Thanks
teeth.
everybody listening, and don't forget to stay tuned next week for another episode of On the Gutter. Thanks, guys.